Welcome to episode 647 of the Entertainment 2.0 podcast, brought to you by thedigitalmediazone.com. I'm Josh Pollard.
And I'm Richard Gunther. And this is the show that puts you in control of your favorite movies, music, shows, and games.
Richard, welcome back. It's good to do another episode in a row with you. Even if we had to take last week off.
Right, exactly. We missed a week, but we missed it together.
Yeah, it didn't work for either of us, really. So, yeah, funny how that works out. And there wasn't tons of news last week, and now we're making up for it. Like, I had to cut things to keep this from being too ridiculously long. We also, because our fans are awesome, have listener feedback to talk about. They heard me whining last episode that we didn't have any feedback to cover. And so a couple of them reached out by emailing us at entertainment20@thedigitalmediazone.com. And we're going to start with Alfred first. He says, "Hey guys, glad to see you back." Not actually see, because we didn't have a YouTube video last week, and we're not going to this week.
But we will. We'll be back doing that.
We'll be back to that soon. He says, regarding Walmart's new ON streaming device, I think a more apt comparison to it would be the Amazon Fire TV Cube devices, the combination of smart speaker and streaming device with hardware ports. And really, the price is a bargain. The ON device is less than half the latest Fire TV Cube is going for, and about what a Google Nest Mini cost. These are all great points. He says, I own the older ON 4K box, and it works great. What I especially like about it is the straight Android TV interface. At the time, it's also very customizable, he says, and you can still install third-party launchers and even reprogram the buttons on the remote control.
But that's really cool to know.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a thing with these devices. He says the other streaming box platforms, well, they're all junking up the user screen with pushed content. So
he didn't exactly put it that way.
No, we editorialized.
We made it G-rated.
Right. Yeah. So he then says, I have just about given up on Amazon devices for this reason. My main streamer is a 7-year-old NVIDIA Shield running the Wolf launcher. Alfred, thanks for the message, and thanks for a bunch of really great points. I always forget about the Fire TV Cube. I'd completely forgotten that was also a smart speaker.
Yep.
I guess that partially explains why it's so expensive. I think that thing retails for like $110.
Yeah, it's always been
maybe?
overpriced, in my opinion.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's still a Fire TV device with all of the UI problems that Alfred was talking about. So yeah, really great comparison. And I love the fact that he also pointed out that this new ON 4K Android TV Pro, or whatever the heck it is about the same price as just a Google Nest Mini on its own. And it's that and more. So yeah, really great feedback. Thanks, Alfred.
All right. We also heard from Lon Paul, longtime listener of the show. And he has some feedback on a bunch of different things that we talked about last time. So first on Peacock, he said, I canceled Peacock about 2 months ago. All it has is The Office and Twisted Metal. By the way, Twisted Metal's a decent show. Definitely different and a wild ride. It's like watching Mad Max, but with comic relief characters. I have not heard of the show. Have you?
Oh, yeah, because it's based on a video game. Twisted Metal was an original PlayStation game.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's an interesting tie-in into this next point. So he said regarding gaming, you may remember we didn't really have much gaming news last time. He said, how can you say, and I'm going to try and express this to properly represent the number of punctuation marks in this sentence, not a lot going on. Sea of Thieves, made by a studio owned by Microsoft, just launched on PS5, and it was #1 pre-order for their store. A 6-year-old game. We definitely sense your enthusiasm there. All right. He also had some thoughts about Fallout. He said, I never played the games, but I loved the show. So wish some people made wish the same people made the Halo show. Again, I'm going to ask you, Josh, have you watched any of the Halo series?
I haven't. The first season got kind of like mediocre reviews, I think, and I've never been the biggest Halo fan ever. And I think it's on Paramount or something, right? Like I'm not going to subscribe to Paramount for a mediocre.
Oh, right. You don't have that.
TV show.
Okay. Yep. Forgot about that. All right. Yeah. I have not watched any of Halo. They were promoting it pretty heavily at South by, but yeah, I didn't really have much interest in that. He says regarding Resident Alien, stick with it. It only grows and adds more, which is good to know, though I haven't watched any more of it yet. He said regarding Wednesday, if you like this show, you might like the movie Lisa Frankenstein on Peacock. Yeah. And then finally, regarding the Hunger Games, he said, try the audiobooks. If you have extra credits sitting around, they're absolutely crushing the movies, which is not a surprise, right? A good movie is often a much better book. So that's good to know. It's not so much a credits issue with me as a time and consumption issue with me. My queue is very long. So, it's going to take a while. And good thoughts about Peacock. The more I thought about this, the more I was thinking I absolutely would end up canceling this if I had to pay for it. If it weren't being paid for me already by American Express, I'm not going to pay a higher price for Peacock. It's just not worth it. And them thinking with all of, for the most part, all they have, and I say this a little bit, with tongue in cheek, is catalog titles. Yes, of course, they have universal titles as well, and they may have exclusive access to some of them earlier than other services do. But I'm not watching a whole lot of catalog stuff these days. I'm watching newer stuff, and their new content really hasn't been all that well received. So I might be canceling too, now that I think about it.
Well, but you're not going to right now because the Olympics are coming up. So you're going to wait until like August to cancel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Olympics are the only thing that I would be keeping it around for at this point.
Yeah. So I've actually considered signing up for Peacock because of sports. And not most of them, like, I don't care about Premier League really, and I don't care about WWE. But they do have IndyCar and IMSA, the sports car series that I really like a lot. But I also recognize that I don't have the time to sit down and watch races like I used to. These things are 2 to 3 hours long or more for the IMSA races. I would love to sit down and watch the 12 hours of Sebring and not get up at all. But that's not a reality with children. So I haven't subscribed to Peacock either, even though it has some of the sports that I would care about.
Yep. All right. Well, he signs off Captain Lon Paul. So Lon Paul, thanks for reaching out to us. Always good to hear from you.
Always.
Josh, I'm going to start us off with the video story here because it's a follow-on to what we were just talking about. And actually, the message you read from Alfred, he and I had a back and forth exchange about this, and he had mentioned that, you may be able to find it in some stores. Well, in fact, it is available now. It is actually on Walmart.com. If you can find it anywhere anymore.
Exactly. So it is officially available now. The On Google TV 4K Pro is what it's called. It is available. It is $50. Basically, everything that we said about it is real. And you can buy it, maybe. If you want to just ship it to your house, well, I checked again tonight, and it's currently out of stock for online shipping. I checked to see if it's available in a store near me. And there's one store that's about 25 minutes from my house that has them. So if they still have them, although I don't know when I would go this weekend either, I want to go buy one of these. I really want to go buy one of these. So hopefully I'll be able to while a store in my area still has them.
Well, I guess I'll ask you this. Yes, you want to buy them, considering that they went out of stock almost immediately. It's unlikely that they're not going to restock, right? This has been very popular. They will get more. Do you need this right now? Or can you just wait until it's more conveniently available?
Well, I want it soon. My family's really tired of my remote control situation with the NVIDIA Shield. And like, that's kind of a dumb reason to get one of these. But I want to check it out and see what it's like.
It could solve an immediate problem that you have.
Yeah. And the fact that it's a Google speaker is cool, actually, kind of, because we do use Google Assistant in our house. We don't have a speaker, or really, we don't have a microphone device in our living room. So if we want to use Google Assistant to like turn on the living room lights or something like that, we're basically screaming into the kitchen where we have one of the Nest displays for it to hear us. So to have one in the living room would also be nice. So yes, I want one of these. Yeah. And if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, it looks like I found NVIDIA Shield remotes on eBay for like $20, and that's probably what I should have just done a while ago, but I haven't.
Oh yeah, eBay.
Yeah. I occasionally think of that when I'm like, I want this old thing. I wonder where I can get it for cheap. eBay. That's the answer. Okay. Well, let's move on to our next real story. That's actual news because, we talked about the Google TV 4K Pro from on last week. So the news here is we have a new bundle from Disney Plus for streaming services. And you might be thinking, well, what else could they possibly bundle it with? They already have a bundle that's Disney, Hulu, and another option that's Disney, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. What else do they have to bundle? Well, they're going outside of their own company walls and offering a new bundle that is Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max. And I was certainly surprised by this. I was not expecting them to be offering bundles with other partners, but they have. There's not a ton of details about this just yet. It's supposed to be coming later, probably this summer. It will have options for both ad-free and supported options. There's not a bundle that includes ESPN Plus here, which is interesting and maybe a sign of what's coming in the future, because Disney, really ESPN and Max and Discovery, I think, is there one other partner too that's working on a like streaming sports package?
So the sports thing, right? Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So maybe that's why ESPN Plus is not in this bundle, because they want people to get that other thing that's coming later this year. So, but it's interesting. Like, I have the Disney, Hulu, ESPN Plus bundle, and I have Max. So I'm in this weird spot where like it kind of makes sense for me, except that it doesn't, because it would probably end up costing me more because of ESPN Plus. So kind of weird. And Richard, I'm curious what you think this is going to cost, because as a reminder, the current Hulu and Disney bundle, if you want the ad-supported version, it's $10 a month. If you want the ad-free version, it is $20 a month. And Max also has an ad-supported plan that is $10 and an ad-free plan for $16. So if there are no discounts here, it'd be easy to say that the ad-supported version is $20 and the ad-free version is $36 a month. But that wouldn't
why would
make
they
any
do that?
sense. Right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, my bet here is they'll probably come in at about $15 or $16 for the ad-free bundle. And I would hope at about $24 or $25 for the combined. And that's a pretty big discount on that price. But if you get over $25 on any service, even if it's multiple things put together, I think you're starting to hit a ceiling in people's mind is about what they're willing to spend on a streaming thing. Even though it is multiple things, it's like, well, yeah, but like $30 for streaming service? And I don't think they're going to be doing the math in their head that, oh, but I'm saving all this money because it's a $30 service. I think they need to keep it. I think it needs to be closer to 25 than 30.
Wow. You and I, it seems like our track record is I predict the lower cost and you predict the higher cost, and you're probably more often right than I am. But we're reversing things this time around because I just don't know how they could possibly, I understand your thinking there, but how they could possibly discount it by $14 a month. That's making Max practically free. And,
well, how's that $14? It'd be $12 at the lowest price.
Sorry, $12. 24. Yes. Yeah. So, but that's still a massive discount. And what I was wondering was, what if the play here is actually that if you pay monthly, it's only a little bit of a discount. But if you pay yearly, it's a big discount. But even then, I was thinking, okay, so they make the monthly ad-supported one $18 a month. But if you pay yearly, then maybe it's $15 a month. And then it's a really awesome deal. And then like something similar with the ad-supported one, that maybe it's like $34 a month, or the cost ends up being like $30-ish a month if you pay yearly. And the reason that I'm wondering if they would do something like that to really discount and really incentivize the year-long subscription is what all of these companies are trying to do now is maximize revenue, not subscribers. Like they feel like they've kind of hit their numbers on subscribers, and they know that a big problem right now that's impacting revenue is churn. People are finally starting to do the thing that you and I have been recommending for years, which is don't subscribe to all of them, just subscribe to a couple of them. And then when you've watched everything that you wanted to watch on that service, cancel it and subscribe to something else.
Yeah, exactly. Although I don't eat my own dog food, but yeah.
Right. But so if they can get you to sign up to a yearly subscription, then they're guaranteeing that revenue they're guaranteeing a bigger chunk of revenue.
Sure.
Instead of just insuring a month at a time.
Yeah, that would come with some lock-in, right? And that's something that would be good for them, less good for consumers, because that would prevent you from doing that except at that annual point. And how many times have you had annual subscriptions that just auto-renew and you're like, I missed the time to be able to kind of... Actually, just today, I got an invoice for a service that I was using a lot with an older client, a former client. They're not really old, just former. And I had forgotten to cancel it when I was done working with them. So now I have another annual subscription to the service I just really don't need because I didn't cancel it in time.
Right.
I think companies rely on that. And they certainly want that lock-in. I don't want to see that in this space. I hope that we don't start seeing that, because while that might look attractive, I think that's artificial, particularly if you are the kind of person who isn't necessarily going to keep something for a whole year.
So I actually did this, but it was because it was a big deal. I think it was probably Black Friday, but it might have been Christmas or somewhere around that time, where Max, like the reason I have Max is because they had some crazy deal that made it $3 a month, I think, for
their launch. Was it a launch deal or was it just a special at some point in time?
I think it was a special near the end of last year.
Yeah.
And so I am on a contract, I guess, with Max, but I'm getting it for $3 a month.
Yeah, well, that's crazy. In that case, then yeah, that makes sense. What are you going to lose? $3 a month.
Right.
I mean, arguably, I did this with Disney, right? I subscribed to Disney at something like, I think it equated to $6 a month for a 3-year period.
Right.
Well, there was no way I wasn't going to want Disney stuff for 3 years.
Right.
So that was a no-brainer for me. But when you're combining stuff like Disney and Hulu, and the content on Hulu changes all the time, and Max, and the content on Max has been pretty stable, but that service has been out there for a while now. It could end up, licensing out of some of the stuff that they're currently showing on the platform. I don't know. I don't know that I would want to be locked into that for that long.
I think that this is the absolute perfect timing for the bundle of these 3 services, because like you said, there's a lot of people out there who are just, by default, they're like, I'm never going to not subscribe to Disney Plus. I love Disney. I love everything that's on. I'm always going to be subscribed, whatever. Right. And I think there's a lot of people that feel somewhat similar with HBO. Like there's so much good stuff on HBO. There's such a real, an incredible catalog of older content to watch. There's still new stuff to watch. They've got a new Game of Thrones thing coming out like any day now or whatever. You know more about that than I do because I don't watch Game of Thrones. And they've got movies, and good movies like Dune will be on the service next week. And then Hulu is that wild card. But what I really think makes this perfect timing around Hulu is, has there been a time in the last couple of years where more people have been interested in stuff on Hulu than right now, with Shogun being out there? Like there's a lot of people watching Shogun, and the last series that I can think of that was on Hulu that had a lot of people watching about it and talking about it was Handmaid's Tale. Right. And that was pre-pandemic, I'm pretty sure. That feels like it was a million years ago.
Well, right. They haven't had any of their big hits recently.
Yeah. So if you're going to do it, like this seems like the perfect time.
Yeah, potentially. We'll definitely watch this. We're talking about what we think it's going to cost because they haven't said what it's going to cost yet.
Right. So hopefully we'll get that soon. The other thing that I briefly want to hit on, maybe this is inside baseball, but because we are kind of part of the media, I do like to point finger at media people who are doing things that I think are dumb, or just the social media reaction to some stories. I see so many people saying, see, streaming is just turning into cable TV. It's becoming the thing we didn't want. Cable TV was bundles, and now we've got bundles. And these people that are claiming this is cable, how could this turn into cable? Like, don't they remember what cord cutting is? They're forgetting all of the other important details about what we didn't like about cable. One was subscriptions. Like, you were locked in. Typically with cable, you were locked in for years or multiple years. I know that was one part of it, but the even bigger part of it is that with cable, you had no options. If you wanted ESPN, your only option was your only local cable provider.
Right.
And that's not the case here. if you don't want this bundle, then don't get the freaking bundle. Just subscribe to Disney Plus. Right? Like it's not in any way like cable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see the reaction and I understand it. It's funny. I often quote Jared Newman, who's one of the journalists we know, and he's constantly railing on those who are harping about this being just like cable now, pointing out all the different ways that it isn't. But of course, there are similarities. Prices went up. A lot of people feel like there was bait and switch. The model didn't work financially. We had this splintering of things where everybody had to have their own service. And I mean, everybody, before we got to the point that we have Peacock and HBO and Max, remember that every network was pretty much trying to do its own streaming thing separately. Right. Yep. And part of that was because of TV everywhere, so that there would be an alternative for you to watch their content through, because you had a cable subscription, but watch it on a mobile device or somewhere else. But the consolidation was inevitable. And it's good because it's fewer things that you need to subscribe to. Nobody was going to offer you a streaming service for $2 a month, right? Everything was going to come in at something like $5 to $10 minimum. And you start adding that up with all these one-offs, and it's just not sustainable for consumers. So that's not going to bring the revenue in that the studios want. And I think these partnerships are smart. While we're talking about partnerships, just today, Comcast announced that if you're a Comcast subscriber, now this is an interesting twist, right? If you're a Comcast subscriber to any of their services, their TV or their mobile or their service for just internet service, that they'll have a bundle coming up that will include streaming from Peacock, Netflix, and Apple TV. And they also haven't announced their own pricing, but this is kind of harbinger can be a misinterpreted word, but this is kind of like a heads up for what's coming. I think we're going to see more of this as companies try to come up with ways to eat into the huge advantage that Netflix still has in the market and the share that they get, despite everybody complaining that Netflix doesn't have anything on it.
Right.
They actually have probably more content than anyone, but people are expecting to see, big hits and stuff like that on there. And that's not really what they've been doing lately.
I don't know if that's entirely fair. I don't think they've got a lot of brand new hits.
Right.
But they've got some series and stuff that are still doing great, like Formula One Drive to Survive and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And wasn't that stupid Tom Brady thing on Netflix?
I don't even know.
What?
I think you said something about a sports ball person, and I don't really know what that's about.
Okay, fine. Let's move on, Richard. You have to ruin everything when we get to sports. All right, let's do some audio news. So real quick one, kind of a bummer of a story. Again, probably related to we need to find a way to get more revenue out of our customers. And this time it's Spotify. Some people discovered that, well, really this goes back to last fall, where it looked like maybe some users who were just using the free Spotify subscription, or not even subscription service, no longer had the ability to view song lyrics. And now it's looking far more widespread, to the point where maybe no one who has a free account on Spotify can get song lyrics anymore. But those of us who have premium subscriptions, we can still see song lyrics. So it looks like just another play by Spotify to try and entice people with, look at all of the value you get out of the Spotify premium subscription, related to like their AI DJ thing that they recently added and some of the other things that frankly, and they're talking about adding music videos, and they, of course, added the audiobook collection with some weird stipulations around that. They're trying, but, previously, like all of those other things that I just said are features that they added. And this is the opposite of that. This is them saying, we're going to take away features from the free users. And that sucks.
Yeah. The verb you used, enticing, was a really generous way of putting that. Because this is kind of bait and switch, right? You had one thing, it included these services. Now we're going to make you use a more expensive thing if you want to keep having that service that we're taking out of the less expensive thing. It's kind of like the Evernote model. And I mean, that's a company that's not doing so well these days. Also, I look at Spotify and I have a big problem with the moves that they've been making because they are in a position where they need to keep customers happy. They used to be the big gorilla in the room. Now they're scrapping, trying to keep up with all of the competition that is in this space. And while they still have a decent share, they are one of the companies that is very vocally fighting all of these monopolistic practices cases against Apple. And when you start doing stuff like this, that doesn't look so good on you either.
Right. Yeah. And the rumors continue. Like, we don't typically talk much about rumors, but the rumors continue to swirl that another Spotify price increase is coming soon. So just, it feels like a lot of bad news around Spotify right now. And as a long time Spotify subscriber, I don't like seeing it.
Yep. Well,
also, can we have hi-fi, please? Please. It's been years since they announced Spotify hi-fi, and we still don't have it.
For real?
For real. Still not
Wow. There. Wow.
Yeah. While Apple and Amazon.
Both for free. Both added it for free.
Exactly. Not only delivered it, but delivered it for free. And we're expecting, and to make it worse, we reported recently that Tidal reduced their cost. So, right. Oh, it's not great. It's not great for Spotify right now. I don't know how they come out of this looking good when they do eventually launch these things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's I guess stick with the bad audio news.
While we're talking about bad things in audio, hey, have you tried your Sonos app recently?
You mean the new Sonos app that replaced the previous app? It's not like a new app that you can run side by side with the old app?
Right. No, it's not. So remember we talked about Sonos coming up with a new app, and I was not excited. I tried to stay potentially positive about it, but this company doesn't have a good track record at improving their app over time. They just continue to make it worse. And it was getting incrementally worse over the years. Well, as we knew they were going to do, they decided to start from scratch. They're just going to rebuild from the ground up. And it kind of feels like their design lead said to a bunch of interns, hey, let's say we could do anything we wanted with no constraints, like what our full feature set is, what the current UX standards are on any platform, and accessibility. We don't have to worry about that stuff. Let's just build what we want and not worry about those things. And not surprisingly, customers are not happy because what they ultimately released was an app that has less functionality than their previous app. You can't do some of the things that you could in the old app. it is confusing as anything, because the easiest way to get around in most apps is a big old tab bar at the bottom that lets you jump between different capabilities in the app or feature areas, if you will. That's gone. Nope. Now you just have to scroll through stuff to get there, or find the label somewhere that is actually a link to maybe go set things up. It's very confusing. The design is fine. I mean, from a design perspective, it's fine. Nothing, it reinforces their design pattern that they've used on their website and on their products. And so whatever. But also they they just didn't build a lot of the things that you need to make the app fully accessible by people maybe with vision or other accessibility issues, mobility issues, or dexterity issues. All of the stuff that's built into these phone platforms just isn't available through this app. So, yeah, lots of problems there. They heard the feedback, and they had their communications people talk with the press, and they said that it takes courage to fully redesign an app, and customers often push back on change. It seems like what they really did was they created an MVP, a minimum viable product. That's what we would call it in the software space. This is the least that we could do to get something out there. But here's the thing. That's what you do when you're a new company, not when you already have a product that you're servicing already and your customers have things that they expected to be able to do. So now they say that they are going to be releasing updates regularly and quickly, so that over the course of the next couple of months, they will be adding these missing features. What's missing? Stuff like, alarms, which is a very popular feature. Stuff like editing your playlist. Why would you want to do that? That's gone. That's not in there anymore. And so they are going to be adding these and other features that are not there, and they'll be adding the accessibility stuff. They hadn't asked me anything today. I'm sure that must have been really interesting because they have not been getting great feedback on this. The web app that replaces the desktop app isn't bad. I actually like it. It's a much better design than what they had before. And it's a more traditional app that lines up with what you expect to see, with a bunch of tiles of either playlists or album artwork and stuff like that. So they did a pretty good job there, except that even though you can set it to run as a web app, so how in a lot of browsers now you can kind of quote download, what you're really doing is you're creating a Chromeless version of your browser, just going to that website and making it look and behave like an app on your desktop. It can do that. That's awesome. But it logs you out every day.
What?
Even though it's a desktop app.
Come on.
And it does so with a error message, with an error that says there's an internal server error. Yeah. That's because A, you don't have good error handling, and B, you shouldn't be canceling sessions when it's running as a desktop app. Ridiculous.
It's not your bank website. It's
right.
Sonos.
It's my music service. Exactly. But I'll bet that their website that you actually have to log into isn't smart enough to differentiate the traffic between logging in to buy a speaker on your account versus logging into your Play service. Yeah.
So many problems.
So they have a lot of work to do. And I have confidence that they will. I don't know that they're going to hit the mark on these improvements that they're promising, but this has not been a good rollout for them.
Well, And even if they do fix most of these problems, how long is it going to take?
Yeah. Now, they're saying months. They're saying it in a couple of months, they're going to have most of this stuff taken care of. So we'll see if they stick to that timeline. I mean, a couple of months could be anything from like, 2 to 9, right? So,
Right.
And if we're talking CES time, it could be well into next year.
Right. Yeah. And who said 2 months? Was it the software engineers who
Well,
estimated
they
that?
said
Or was it the sales
few
people?
months. Well, right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is this an artificial deadline set by your communications department?
Right.
Or is this an actual estimate based on the velocity you achieved when you were building the current app in its current state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell that Richard and I work in software development?
Yeah. Which is why it's so frustrating when you see companies do it poorly.
Right. This is so bad. Well, if you're a Sonos user and you're fed up with it, you just can't handle this anymore.
And you haven't bought like a dozen speakers
Even
around
if you
your
have,
house.
maybe it's time to sell them because we've got some new products that you could use instead, potentially. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar. So we've talked about this company before. I've never looked it up to see how I'm actually supposed to pronounce it. I'm going to keep calling them Weem because it's funny. W-I-I-M.
That makes sense too.
It does make sense, but it also sounds funny and fun. So Weem has 2 new devices that they're launching, and they both sound like nice upgrades to their existing devices. And these are devices that are, I guess they call them like network streaming, audio streaming devices. And so it's kind of like a Sonos without a speaker. Like a Sonos, but bring your own speakers is kind of the way these work. And I'll get into the specifics of how they work because it's 2 different devices that do work differently. So there's, but let's talk about the things that are common between them first. So both of these offer you the ability to use AirPlay 2, Chromecast, DLNA, Spotify Connect, like all of those sorts of very common streaming protocols and solutions that you're probably already using in some way or another to cast music around your house. These devices support all of that stuff. These new devices have new DACs, digital audio converters in them, 32-bit, 384 kilohertz. If you're an audiophile type person, you know that those are very good numbers that should, in theory, produce very high quality audio. And in the case of the amp that we're going to talk about, it even has a much better signal to noise ratio. So there's your other like audiophile buzz phrase, I guess, signal to noise ratio that you might care about. The other thing that both of these bring to the table, because they are network streaming devices, is they have Wi-Fi 6E, pretty much the latest common Wi-Fi standard. There is Wi-Fi 7 technically now, but 6E is the more common thing that you might have around your house already. And they also support Bluetooth 5.3 so that you could connect directly from your phone over the latest Bluetooth protocol. So that's what they both have. Now, the 2 different devices, there's the Weem Ultra, and this is a box where the idea is that you would take this thing and you can connect it to other devices. You can plug for the first of any of Weem's products. You can plug a record player into this. You can plug basically anything that has a standard RCA jack or an optical cable or even an HDMI eARC cable into this thing. And then to be able to hear from any of those sources or from your like AirPlay 2 or Chromecast sort of thing, then you plug it into something like an AV receiver or an amp because it won't connect directly to your speakers. So if you already have an AVR with awesome speakers, maybe a surround sound setup, or just a really nice stereo setup. There are multiple ways to connect this thing to those. That new device, the other cool thing about this one is it has a 3.5-inch touchscreen on the front of the box. And these boxes actually look really nice. This doesn't look like a junky piece of plastic that you really just want to hide behind your components. It actually looks pretty nice. And I think the touchscreen on the front also adds something to the design experience. The touchscreen can be used for controlling things, although controlling things on a touchscreen that's that small may not actually be the most practical. But it also will like display album art and stuff, which is kind of cool. So that's the Weem Ultra, and that's $329. The other device that they announced is the Weem Amp Pro. So they have the Weem Amp. This is a newer version that's it's not really that much different than the existing Weem Amp, but it does have the new DAC. It's got the Wi-Fi 6E. It's got the new Bluetooth 5.3. It has those things. Those are the big differences with this thing, including that better signal to noise ratio. This is an amp, which means you can connect regular like bookshelf speakers or whatever directly to this thing. You don't need another device. You put this thing on your network, you plug your speakers directly into it, and it will power the speakers, and you cast or whatever you want to do to get your music to this. The Weem Amp Pro, because it's got the amplifiers in it, it's more expensive. It is $369. These are going to be available this summer. We don't exactly know when, but sometime this summer. So, Richard, you're going to sell all your Sonos stuff and buy some speakers and some Weems and
No. But these are nice products, and it's interesting to me that their amp is a separate product, and they're not doing what Sonos does and just bundle the two together, like bundle the Ultra with an amp, like have an amp Ultra or something like that would be one box instead of having the need for both of these. But
you don't need both of these.
But what do you mean you don't need both of these?
Like the Weem Amp Pro basically does all of the things that the Weem Ultra does, but it doesn't have the touchscreen. And yeah, which is why it's more expensive. Like it's basically the same thing, except it has an amp in it instead of requiring you to connect it to an amp or to connect it to an AVR.
Okay, I misunderstood. And now looking at the pictures here, it makes more sense. But it is weird then that their Pro version doesn't have the touchscreen on it, right? Like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. When I was typing up my notes, I was like, I have to have this backwards. Like the Ultra has to be more expensive than the Pro, right? And it's not. Yeah, it does feel a little weird. Like, why not add the touchscreen and stuff to the Weem Amp Pro? Maybe that'll be yet another thing that they release later. The Weem Amp Ultra Pro for $425 or something.
Okay, well, that's all the more reason for me not to get this, because I clearly don't know how it works and I'd be buying the wrong stuff. But this is, I think, we've talked about their stuff before, and I'm very impressed with the products that they have out. And I think if you're not already kind of locked into something like Sonos or some other system like that, and you want a good quality audio thing around your home, these are really good alternatives.
Yeah, like every time we talk about these, especially on the YouTube videos, we get tons of comments from fans of these devices who just love them. So if you've got some really nice speakers that you really love the sound of, and you just wish you could AirPlay to them, like this is how you do that. So it's some cool new devices from Weem. All right, let's get, at least we ended the audio news with some good news after a couple of really sad stories. All right, let's move on to gaming news. And I do feel like I don't have it in the notes, but I feel like I at least need to acknowledge that for sure the biggest news that actually happened in the gaming space over the last couple of weeks was that Microsoft/Xbox Game Studios closed up a couple of their studios. They completely closed and laid off lots of people. We don't even know how many people have actually been impacted yet. And it sucks. And there's a lot to figure out there. And it could spell some bad news for Xbox Game Pass and things like that. But we haven't really been talking that much about all of the video game studio closures over the last year. And I feel like with this one, there's so much else that we're waiting to find out. And there are rumors that there will be even more from Xbox soon, that maybe we just hold off and see what the fallout of this is actually going to look like. Because there's a lot of speculation. Again, there's a lot of people out on social media and even in the games media who don't seem to understand how business works. And I'm just sick of the bad takes of like, how does a company with $3 trillion market cap not just keep these people on? Like, don't they have the money to do it? Well, that doesn't actually make business sense, people. That's not how they became as big of a company as they are. So,
but you understand the sentiment, right? Because
sure.
This is affecting so many lives and it makes you think, okay, I don't necessarily understand the way that a pipeline works in a gaming shop, but can't you have a funnel of work that is going to backfill when one big project is done and then you go on to your next big project? Why is it that this is always such highs and lows? Like, these companies ramp up and hire thousands of people and then dump them once they get a big title out.
Yeah. And this feels a little bit different this time. And maybe I'm just reading too much into what the actual company line was from this, but they're changing their focus. Like, they want to change the types of games that they're building and stuff, which I think, like, if all of that is true, then that does potentially leave us with some interesting thoughts on what happens with Xbox Game Pass, because one of the studios that they closed, Tango Gameworks, their most recent game was a surprise launch last year. It was more of an indie kind of game that probably wouldn't have done, gangbusters if it would have just been released as a regular game out on the market, but it wasn't. It came to Game Pass, and it reviewed, like, it critically did well. The critics loved it, but you never really know how well a game sells. I'm gonna do like giant air quotes in a subscription service like this, and like, these types of titles are one of the reasons why people have liked Game Pass, because it has allowed some of these studios to take risk on smaller projects like this, because they know they've got the funding from the Game Pass contract, basically. And so that's a little bit concerning that, if Xbox's new focus is, well, we're really just going to focus on the big things now. If you're not Call of Duty and you're not Diablo and you're not Halo and Gears of War, then maybe we're just not going to shove resources that way anymore. Not sure. Like, they didn't close everything that they announced here, and some of the studios that they did kind of close, they basically just said, you're not going to work on what you were working on before. Now you're going to go work on this other thing instead, which is kind of the ideal. Like, that's better. That's what you want to hear, right?
Right.
Instead of just people losing their jobs. But there isn't always a place for that. And I think, we're already talking way more about this than I expected to. But I think the other thing that, like, it just has to play into this is especially in tech, we saw companies across the board in 2020 and 2021 way overhire when the economy went crazy. And so they all overhired. And then they've really spent the last 2 years going, oh, we overhired. And they're laying off tons and tons of people. And I have to imagine that some of that plays into this too.
Maybe, but I feel like Microsoft's already done a lot of that. Now, granted, from these studios, some of these studios were different entities then, or at least have been running as different entities. So they might have had their own, their own growth that they were dealing with during that time. I don't know. It's just I always I don't know what the right word is, but I always feel uncomfortable when we talk about these sorts of things because so many people's lives that they poured their heart and soul into. I mean, if you know any game programmers, these people like work insanely on this stuff.
For sure.
And if they're non-exempt, meaning they are full-time employees of these companies, they're often working ridiculous hours to meet deadlines that are not arbitrary, but I'm not aware of too many game houses that are using good agile development methods to build games.
Right, because you can't really, unless it's one of these live service games. So, like, I'm completely with you. Like, I of course hate hearing about all of the people who have lost their jobs as a result of all of this, and it's not even the first. Like in January, I think it was, shortly after, just a few months after the Activision acquisition finalized, Xbox laid off like 1,900 people or something like that. And now we've got what's got to be a few hundred more, and rumors are even more coming very soon. And it sucks. It's terrible. But I also don't think it's fair to be like, well, the company should just absorb all of this. Like that isn't an answer that makes a ton of sense either.
I agree, but I think maybe we need, as an industry, as I feel that perhaps the video and music industries also should have been doing all along, when you realize that you can't make the kind of money that you did on streaming, and now they're really the third industry to be facing this, then maybe your business model needs to be a little more diversified. Because if they're putting everything into their streaming service, and that's going to get the majority of people, then purchasing games on disc is going to go the way of Blu-ray.
Right.
And that's where the money was.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that plays a big role in this is the video game industry as a whole is not growing. It's just not growing. And especially on the hardware side. Like people want to talk about all of the revenue that Microsoft made, which isn't really relevant. What's only really relevant is what Xbox made. And if Microsoft would not have acquired Activision last year, the Xbox division of Microsoft would have taken a massive loss last year. They only squeaked out a profit in the Xbox division because of the money that came through Call of Duty and Activision.
From Activision titles. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're doing potentially they're doing what you just said. They're looking at their business model and trying to find a way to change it in a way that will work. Because if they don't, this is the part that like never gets really talked about by the people who are like, oh, they should just absorb this. Well, eventually, if you just keep absorbing it, then the whole company goes under. Like you have to find a new way or else everybody loses. And it sucks that some people lose, but they have to figure out new ways to make money. And with Xbox, it's never been hardware, and it's not going to be. And if it's not Game Pass and it's not traditional gaming revenue sources, then what is it? And Xbox and every other big player in the gaming space is trying to figure this out right now.
Yep.
And it sucks.
But that wasn't even the story that we had in the notes to talk about.
No, it wasn't. The other one was, I think, is a cheerier story, even though it's talking about the end of something. So, do you believe that it has been 18 years since the Xbox 360 launched?
That is kind of crazy.
It's nuts to me that it's been that long. Well, last summer, Xbox announced that they're finally going to shut down the Xbox 360 specific store. And so that means that you've really only got a couple of months to purchase Xbox 360 games from that store. And because it's closing on July 29th. But they're basically having a going out of business sale. Then this is the fun part. So they're saying to celebrate the legacy of the Xbox 360, they're working with publishers to deeply discount tons of games in the Xbox 360 store that are also backwards compatible. At least I think all of these are. Many of them are, but even if they're not, you could still play them on your 360 if it works.
You mean forward compatible? The games will work with the newer the newer consoles.
Yes, but we typically refer to the technology as backward compatible because your Xbox Series X will play these things. Yes. But the games are forward compatible. So the thing, there's really a couple of things that I like about this. One is the size of the discount. Almost all of these games that are on sale right now are 75 to 90% off. So you're talking about games that are just a couple of bucks each. They're also going to continue to add other games to the sale. So on June 18th, they're going to add more. And on July 16th, which really only gives you a couple of weeks, they're going to add even more. And all of these games, just like a regular going out of business sale, these sales go until they're out of business. So it's not like you have to go and look right now, buy these ones, and then on June 18th, it's a different set entirely. No, it's all of these games will be on sale throughout all of this. So head on out there, look through this list. If there's a game that you really like that you never or were interested in, go out and buy it because you're still going to be able to play these things. If you've got a 360, you'll still be able to download them. If you've got an Xbox One or an Xbox Series X or S, you'll be able to go to the store and install them still. You just aren't going to be able to buy them in the future. So go out and get them for like $2 each because that's awesome.
And you may be wondering, why would they even do this? Like when I go to my Xbox and I go to the store, they're just there with everything else. So what difference does it make? Why would they close the store? It's the same thing. It's not. If you've gone and purchased an Xbox 360 title, you'll notice that it still is a different experience once you click to buy it.
Right.
It's actually using different infrastructure that they're having to maintain 18 years later.
Right.
to sell those titles. So it makes a whole lot of sense for them to get rid of that probably old and maintenance hungry platform that continues to make those titles available to purchase.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be trying to support an 18-year-old e-commerce system that I'm trying to make sure that it doesn't have security issues because it's also accepting credit cards from people.
Right. Oh, and how would you like to be the manager who's trying to argue for funding for that?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Not happening. Not happening. So go and buy these games for nickels or however much they actually cost and enjoy them. All right, that's it for our news. It's been a long news segment. Richard, what have you been watching in your entertainment center?
Well, luckily not a lot because we've taken a lot of time already. So we've been watching the new season of the US version of Ghosts. That's been very good. Caught up on that. I've been watching The Amazing Race. I am not caught up on that. I have 1 or 2 episodes to watch there. I've been watching Discovery. I stalled hard on episode 6, and it took me about 4 times
Jeez.
to get through it without either falling asleep or getting distracted by something else. So I finally finished watching that 2 nights ago. There are, I believe, just 2 more episodes left, if I'm counting right. I think this season is a short season. I think it's only 8 episodes. So I am looking forward to finishing that. And that will be the end of the series. That this is the final series for the season for Discovery. Started watching the new season of Doctor Who, which just started. Really like the new Doctor. Man, this is the original showrunner. And these 2 episodes were just so friggin' weird. So I hope the whole season is not going to be this strange, because it was strange. They were both really strange, fun, but strange. So we'll see how that goes. And I've been watching many videos, Josh, so many videos on YouTube about electric cars and 3D printing. So many videos.
So that obviously tells me that you're in the market for an electric car. Has this helped like narrow it down to a couple of options for you?
As a matter of fact, it did. So I was really hoping to get the electric version of the car that I already drive. I have a Volvo sport wagon or whatever they call it.
Is that the XC70
cross country
or something?
XC90.
XC90.
The bigger one. And they're coming out with an electric version of that last year. Oh, wait, no. This year, maybe. So that's not happening. So I asked for my money back because I put a deposit on a reservation and started looking around. And of all the cars that I've been looking at and test driving, I decided on a BMW. And I've been a BMW driver before. Don't worry, I still use my turn signals. But I know you have to pay extra for those on a BMW. But
do you take up multiple parking spots when you go to the grocery store?
I try not to. Okay. I try not to. And with the cameras on these things, there's really just no excuse for that anymore, because you can see where they are when you're driving in. But anyway, yeah, so I'm going with an all-electric BMW. I actually did the drive down to North Carolina in my current car and stopped along the way at all the charger sites that I could use to see, okay, what is this like? Are they working? Are they available? Will I be able to get in and without having to wait and stuff like that? And made myself comfortable that I can do this. I can make this switch. So I'm excited about that. And that will actually come with a new entertainment component, because I ordered it with, I custom ordered what I wanted, because BMWs, man, all the dealers, they get the sport package on every single car they order. And I don't want the sport package. The sport package usually includes like curtaining or whatever you call it around the outside, and which means that I'm going to crash into those parking barriers and curbs, and I don't want to be doing that. And it usually includes the bigger wheels that don't do as well from a mileage perspective and are a harder ride, and I don't want that. And so, yeah, so I had to order what I wanted, and I ordered one that has the Bowers and Wilkins audio system in it, which is supposed to be friggin' amazing. Also, fun fact, electric cars have to have noises now when they're over a certain or under a certain speed, and when they're accelerating, so that people are aware that there's a car there and might not, you don't get hit because you don't see or hear a car. So Hans Zimmer did the sounds for this car. Josh, it was meant to be.
Does it still sound like a spaceship? Because they, like every electric car that I hear, they sound like spaceships.
It is rather ethereal, but it's a cool sound. It's a very cool sound.
That's awesome.
And then on the 3D printing side, literally today, a 3D printer arrived. That was my birthday present from Edward.
Awesome.
So I've been doing a lot of research on just everything because I know nothing about 3D printing, absolutely nothing. So I was researching models, I was researching filament, like the materials that you use in it, the different things that you can do with it, how you do it. And I ended up getting something that is supposed to be pretty tinker free because most of the problem with most of these things is that you need to really just, you need to be the kind of person that is willing to set up a Raspberry Pi to do stuff in your home if you're going to be doing 3D printing. Not because you need a Raspberry Pi for this, but that's the kind of mentality, right? Like you're really diving in. And a couple manufacturers have started building things that are more complete products that are just designed to, you take it out of the box, you put a couple pieces on and boom, it's ready to go. So I'm going down that path because, as you know, I have lots of time for hobbies, right?
Right. Obviously.
Oh,
no.
Right. No, but we'll see.
Too busy stopping at every electric charging place between you and North Carolina.
I know, right? I mean, it was just 8 stops. It wasn't that bad.
Just 8 stops.
It was just 8 stops. So, but the good news is I'll probably only really need to stop once. All right. So also been listening to some audiobooks. I finished The Coming Wave, the book that we were doing with our book club with my consulting company. And I started Rachel Maddow's prequel. And so I'm not very far in that. I think that's probably going to take me about a week or 2 to get through. So that's it for me. How about you, Josh?
Well, it's been a very busy couple of weeks. That's why we didn't have a show last week. So not a ton of gaming time outside of a little bit of sitting on the couch and playing NHL. And not tons of time for watching things either. When I have collapsed exhausted at the end of an evening, I've been using my Max subscription to watch the NHL playoffs, which I have absolutely loved having that for them. Yeah, the games have been great. The coverage is really well done. And I've just been shocked that most of the games have been on Max. I expected them all to be on ESPN, and the vast majority of them have been on Max. So I really like that because I don't currently pay for a service that would give me ESPN. So that's been nice to be able to watch these for $3 a month or whatever it is that I'm paying for Max. Also was looking for something to watch while on the treadmill and decided, since I'm in Max all the time now, maybe I should go back and watch The Wire. I had started The Wire.
Oh, wow.
10 years ago?
Wow.
And I know I finished the first season, but I don't think I got too much past that. And I think just for no good reason, just kind of fell off. And everybody has always talked about how great of a show The Wire is. So I'm a couple episodes in. I almost gave up after the first one, and not because it's not a good show, but it's just, man, like it's depressing in a way.
Yeah, it's a hard show.
It's a hard show to watch.
Hard watch.
And like the language that is used, like I'm not a prude. I can swear and all of that sort of stuff. But like when you watch a show and you're really interested in it, like I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people, like when they stop watching it, they'll talk the way that people talk in the shows for a little while, right? And I don't want to talk the way, especially the like drug dealers and stuff talk. But I needed something to watch this morning. I'm like, I don't have time to come up with something else to watch at 5:30 in the morning. So let's just watch the next episode of The Wire. And I didn't feel nearly as depressed and stuff at the end of that. So I'm going to stick with it, I guess, unless somebody else has a better suggestion.
That's an interesting way to start your day, Josh.
It sure is. It sure is. But yeah, it's good. And the show is so old. It is so old. Like this show, the first few seasons were in SD. They weren't even in HD. It's so old.
Right. It was one of their early big hits
Yeah.
for an in-house show.
Yeah. And I think later seasons are in HD, and everything is at least widescreen. But I
okay.
still think they are SD, but I'm not entirely positive. I'm not watching this for video fidelity. I just want something to watch on my crappy computer monitor while I run.
Right. And you didn't want to watch old episodes of Bob Newhart like I do?
No. No. You do that while you're running 5 miles on the treadmill?
Oh, no. No, I do that while I'm fighting sleep.
Right. Right. And then books. I think I talked last time, maybe not. I finished The Stand finally. 48-hour audiobook finally done.
Yikes.
It's really good. The character development is amazing. Really, really, really well done. But it is a 48-hour book that ends too quickly. The ending just was too abrupt. I'm not going to say that it's not a good book. It's still a fantastic book. But I wish Stephen King would have done more with the ending than what he actually did.
Wow, I think I could have said those words about every book of his I've ever read. I always feel like he shorts the ending. I always feel like the ending is his Achilles heel.
Yeah. And what everybody that I've talked to has said is, well, you need to read it. It is the best one. And I haven't even watched the new movie.
No, I have not.
But that one's also ridiculously long. So I'm not ready for that right now. So instead, I'm reading another long book, and that's Dune, because the movies are out. And I watched the first one a couple of months ago. The new one, Dune Part 2, comes to Max next week, I think. And I
just
thought,
got my disc today.
Let's read it. And it's really well done. It's really, like, it amazes me that this book is so old. Like, I think this was written in the 50s or the 60s, maybe early 60s. And it is really, really well written. It's so good. So, and the audiobook version that I'm listening to is one of these ones where it's like they've got multiple actors.
Oh, wow.
That are playing the parts of the characters, which to me adds so much to the story.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really good. I think, and it's long, but it's still like less than half the length of The Stand. I think it's like 22 hours or something like that.
I think that might have been the first sci-fi book that I ever read. No. Now that I think about it, I probably read Hitchhiker's Guide first when I was young. Like, sat down with the book and read it.
Right. Hitchhiker's Guide is another one I've never read.
Oh, it's so much fun. All 5 of them of the trilogy are so much fun. I mean, that right there should tell you everything.
Right. I have heard it is a very funny book. So, all right. Well, that is it for what has been going on in my entertainment center. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot else because this weekend is also crazy for me. But let's get out of here and tell you ways that you can get a hold of us. I'm on Twitter, so is the website, at Josh Pollard, at DigiMediaZone. Richard is on Mastodon. He's Richard Gunther over there. And Richard, you've also got another podcast you do around here called Home On, and I hear you've got some Home On news for us.
Yeah, I do. As I mentioned previously, I was going to be recording with Allison Sheridan. That's happening tomorrow, so I'm very excited about that. And we're going to be talking about smart home quibbles, basically stuff that goes wrong in the smart home and how we have either worked around, through, or in spite of that. It's not going to be news heavy, so I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to get it out this next week, given that I have a new toy sitting in the basement right now. But that will be out this month. And also, there's a new episode of the Smart Home Show that will be out this week. And we had Mike Wolf, the original host of that show, on to talk with us about Smart Kitchen, because the Smart Kitchen Summit is coming up next month, and I will be out there in Washington State for that.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Well, we also sometimes do the show live. That we'll probably get back to very soon. And the YouTube videos very soon also. And follow us on social media to know for sure when those are going to happen, because that's going to do it for episode 647. He's Richard Gunther and I'm Josh Pollard. Thanks for listening to Entertainment 2.0. Adios.
Goodbye.